So there's no.
Okay.
This meeting is recorded.
Yep, I'm recording. So here's the question. The question is, if I'm trying to get in a device and it says it's locked and I'm supposed to be able to get into it. Now, there are some packet tracers where you will not be able to get into the device because there is no, it's not part of the configuration or whatever. But this one, obviously, you're supposed to. What you do is you go down here to your lightning bolt, your connections. You click on the ugly Carolina blue console cable.
Oh, okay. All right.
You click on the PC itself and you're going to connect it to RS-232 because on a real computer, you connect to the console port. It's called a serial port, a DB9 or a USB port today. We actually use USB today, but we're going to use RS-232 and then go down to the switch and connect to the console port.
Okay.
Now, once you do
All
that,
right, 'cause I opened it one time and it actually had the rack and a table.
that was the
And
first lab. That was the very first lab. See, every one of these is different because when you open it, it's built just for the lab that you're doing in packet tracer. So every single packet tracer you open may look different. But if I click here now and I go to desktop and I go to terminal, okay, when we connect it in the real world, let me find a real world connector. Hold on, I got one here. Yeah, I lied to you, I don't have one. Yeah, dude, hold on, got one right here.
I was gonna say, is one in the classroom, Kelly?
Yeah, I got one right here.
Okay.
This is a real cable. Okay, this is a real, let me turn off my background. Well, you can see it there. So this is a real cable and it is connected to the back of my PC with a DB9 connector, okay? So we take this and plug it into the router or switch on the console port. Typically it's on the back of a switch and on the front of a router. So once we do that, we then open up a program like PuTTY. So a terminal emulation program. So I use PuTTY. So here's PuTTY. And we usually use, for using serial connection, we click here and we set up our serial connection so that it has these settings: 9600 bits, 8 data bits, no parity, 1 stop bit, and no flow control. That is especially important on USB, serial to USB, because that can cause problems. Then we click OK and you'll notice what happens. It now has opened up the console port on the switch. So that's the equivalent, and I will actually do this. I'm gonna stop sharing for just a second, folks. Let me turn off my background. Let me go to none. All right, so welcome everyone, by the way. We are recording, so everybody's getting this, but this is a switch. This is a Cisco switch, all right, 2960. It's broken. This one no longer works. Somebody sent it to me and I was trying to fix it. It won't work. On the front, obviously we have normal Ethernet ports. Depending on the switch type, these could be fast Ethernet, they could be gigabit Ethernet, they could be 10 gig. These are all just fast Ethernet here. And then over here, it's hard when it's reversed. Over here, it's our gigabit ports. But on the back of this Cisco device, you will see, oops, other way, you will see a console port. See that port right there? All right. So in the real world, to connect to a Cisco device, we take and we connect a console cable with a DB9 connector on the other end and an RJ45 on this end. This is called a rollover cable. And we take it and we plug it into the console port on the device, just like so. All right. We then open up our emulation program, our terminal emulation program, which most of us use PuTTY just because it's cheap and free. PuTTY, Super PuTTY. Some folks, everybody's got their own that they like. So everybody's got their own terminal emulator that's their favorite. Okay, so I'm going to now go back to sharing my screen. There we get here, share screen here. Okay, so we get our terminal emulator.
Where did you bring up the?
Where did I bring up the PuTTY? Well, this is real world. This is on my PC right here.
Okay.
Okay, and so in the real world on my PC, I'll connect to COM1. I could click open, and it would open this switch up if this switch was running. All right. We don't have that in Packet Tracer. So in Packet Tracer, what we have to do is we have to do it a little bit differently. So in Packet Tracer, what we have to do is we have to get rid of this console cable. We have a simulation of a terminal emulation program. So what we do is we take our cable, that blue cable, just like we had before. Okay. So if it says use a console connection to access each switch, what you would do is you'll go down to the connections, get the console cable. You will click on the manager, go to RS-232, and then you will go to the console port. Then if you open the PC up, you will see on the desktop a terminal program called terminal. Click here. The settings are already there for you, 9600 click OK. And now you're in the console port of the switch. So you are physically connected to the switch in this simulated environment.
That's
And
how I
that-
do it. That's how I teach my classes to do it. Yeah. Mhm.
Yep.
I
So
just,
now-
it kept saying it was locked, so I was confused. Thank you though.
Right.
Yeah,
How would
that
I
makes sense.
do this at reception side? How would I get connection from reception to room 146?
Same way, take the, well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So grab the
Maybe
console
Caroline
cable.
will- Yeah, and go from reception and
RS-232.
RS-232
Yep.
to the console there, yeah.
Yep.
And then now you should be able to double click your room.
Well, you can't double click the room and go into it because that's still locked. You've got to act like
Okay,
you're actually
so-
on a real
okay.
PC. So you click on the PC,
Okay, let's go to the PC then.
go to the
Okay.
desktop, open up your terminal program,
Yeah,
which this is
terminal.
just a fake putty. That's all it is. And then click enter, and now I'm in the switch.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I have a lot of questions about what you're going to enter in line in config T,
Yep.
line mode. So I'm making a chart here. Got
Yep.
a chart that I'm making as to when to use which. And I'm confused about that. I'm confused about RAM versus non-volatile NVRAM.
Okay. Well, I can explain all of those. The RAM. Let's start with the. So we're at 403. Okay. Let's start with the difference between RAM and non-volatile RAM. Let's also welcome everybody to class. Thank you for all being here. We are going to do a couple things today. First, I will show you in a minute that we have turned on the module exams for you, so they are ready. We've been showing, and it's recorded. So if you were not here earlier, we recorded how to connect in Packet Tracer with a console, and Michael was actually going to show that. He's going to walk through a good part of 291 and show you that. But let's talk a second about in chapter or module 2, it discusses with you Cisco devices. So a Cisco switch, and it talks about a router also. So these all pretty much apply to switch or router. All these devices are our specialized computers. That's it. That is all they are. Okay. So it talks about our switch or router has a CPU. That's the same kind of CPU that's in a computer. It has a RAM or has RAM. What is RAM? Anybody come off mute, tell me what RAM is.
Random access memory.
Okay. So random
Access memory.
Access memory. Now here's how I explain this to my students. Random access memory is the counter space in your kitchen that you prepare your meal on. And as soon as the meal is over, you're supposed to clean that off. Now, back when I lived by myself, my wife come in my apartment one time during college and she was like, this place is a disaster because there was nothing but dishes everywhere. But I said, yeah, you're supposed to actually clean off the cabinets, fellas, if y'all live alone. But random access memory is the workspace for the router switch. We have inside of our RAM is our running config. Okay. We have our buffers. Typically our routing table will be in that when we have routers, switches, and our what we call our CAM table, or content addressable memory table, which is actually just another name for our MAC address table. So all of those are in RAM. In other words, if you turn the device off without saving what's in RAM, it goes away. So the big thing for RAM for you to remember is that's where your running config is at. When you are configuring a Cisco device, you're not actually saving anything until you save the configuration. By default, all the changes you are making are made in the running config, which is in RAM. So I've seen people before spend 3 or 4 hours configuring a router, the power blips off, and because they've not saved any time during that, they just lost 3 hours of work. Now, there's a very simple way to save your running config to your startup config, and that's just copy running config startup config. That's something you need to get in the habit of doing. And that is where NVRAM comes in, or non-volatile RAM. This is a portion or a type of RAM that survives reboot. So non-volatile RAM is where your startup config file is. That's where your startup config is. And sometimes in NVRAM, there's some other items, but for right now, let's just stick with startup config as our main item that's in NVRAM. And then all Cisco devices have another type of memory called flash. Okay. Well, I can't spell flash. Okay. Now, flash is where our iOS is stored. iOS images are stored here. Now, what is an iOS image? It is not something to do with Apple or Macs. All right. It is the internetworking operating system. So when a router or a switch boots, you will actually see. So I'm going to go in here, go to this terminal, click OK here, and I'm going to do a reload. Now this obviously is a simulation, so you'll see how fast it happens. But see these little hashtags here? And look at this comment, loading from flash this image. So when this device reboots, it is actually going into flash and loading that software image, the C2960 land base -MZ, and all that has a meaning that you'll eventually learn down the road, but it means it's compressed and it runs in memory. But this is flash, it's contents. In fact, I can actually do a dir flash, and you will see that the contents of flash are the iOS image. Now, this is just like a computer. Now let's think about it. When we boot a Windows machine, okay, what's the first thing that a Windows box does when it's booted? So let's think about a Windows PC boots. What's the first thing it does?
Power on self-test.
Yep. So we have a post test, power on self-test. Make sure everything's good, everything's okay. By the way, switches and routers do the exact same thing. Now, typically, depending upon how the PC is configured, the next thing it's going to do is it's going to look for some kind of bootloader, right? Some kind of bootloader to go and find what image it's supposed to load. Years and years and years ago, I remembered all the bootloader files. I don't remember them now, especially with Windows 10, Windows 11. So if you know what the bootloader file is, it used to be NT LDR, NT loader. Back in the day. But once it finds the bootloader, it then loads the operating system into memory. Okay, so the bootloader tells you where the operating system is at. All right, so where is the OS? And then it loads it into memory, and then eventually the PC gets booted. Well, Cisco devices do the exact same thing. When a Cisco device boots, it does a power on self-test, okay? It actually uses, all right, Brian, Michael, help me out. I'm having a brain poot here.
Ramon.
Thank you very much. It looks for contents of Brahman. Actually, it looks for the iOS, and what it normally does first is it's going to look for the iOS in Flash. Okay, if there's no iOS in Flash, it has a way of looking other places. It can actually look to a TFTP server, and then if there's no iOS at all, it will actually boot into Ramon mode. Okay, but there is a ROM monitor that sits in there that is basically, after power on self-test, is used to go find the iOS. Then it expands the iOS into memory, if that is how it's supposed to be run, which in most images, I've never seen an image that doesn't run from memory. Okay. And then after it does that, the next thing it does is it looks for the startup config in NVRAM. If the startup config is found in NVRAM, it will then load that startup config and continue booting the device. If no startup config is found, it has a process where it can either go look at a TFTP server, it can go and eventually, if none is found at all, it can put you into a setup mode, or it will just drop you into the switch with nothing on it at all. So it's important to note that a router or a switch is just a specialized computer. That's all it is. There's nothing amazing about them, other than the fact that I will say this, on these devices, we typically do have specialized ASICs. Does anybody know what an ASIC is?
Just a specialized processor for that
That's
purpose.
it. Yeah. And who's saying it's a Donnie? Yeah, Donnie, it's an application specific integrated circuit. And so it is literally just a specialized chip that is designed to tear packets apart and put them back together. Which is why in many cases, even though you can take a Linux box, even a Windows box, and turn them into routers, when we have routers that are designed from the ground up to be a router, they're typically better at it because they have ASICs in them. Any other questions before we let Michael?
Kelly, I'm answering the chat. I did identify one issue, and it's not a big deal, but packet tracer 155, if you select the download link from within Netacad, it actually pulls up 157. It's the same packet tracer. They just forgot to change it from 157 to 155. So it's still a valid
Okay.
packet tracer.
Okay. Yeah, just remember, this is something I showed everybody earlier too, by the way, folks. If you need to ever find a packet tracer, always know that the course index is available. So once you go into the content, if you click the three little items here, it says course index. By default, everything is checked. But if you want to find just packet tracers, uncheck everything, click packet tracers, and then you can find. So like 155, you click here. And what you're saying is, Brian, when you go down to it, it actually is 157.
Yeah, if you select that link, it will actually open 157. You'll see it.
Okay, it's the same one. They just didn't rename it.
Yeah.
They didn't rename the final item on it.
Hey, Kelly, in that lab, we're talking about 155, 157.
Yep.
Is it just the challenge question that is what we turn in? It's unclear to me what
Yeah, on that one, like I said, just turn in your name, just turn in with your name and the number of the packet tracer, because that's just a look and see packet tracer.
Okay, so
it's one of those where there's not really anything much to turn in. There's really nothing to turn in.
okay.
And so it's just what I call a look and see packet tracer. That's this one. And if you just turn it in, then we know you at least opened it and looked at it. Now, if you don't want to, if you didn't do it, you didn't do it. But you know, I'll take it that if you uploaded it, you did it.
I was trying to do it with the challenge and putting some things on there, and
right.
it was giving me some error message. There's a button down there, help me out, where it says for you to check. When you click on check, it says
Check results.
yeah, it would give me a
check results is locked. Yeah, because this is one they're not grading anything.
Okay.
So they actually, even if you go in and do some of these extra items here, like adding a device and all, it's not graded.
Okay.
So there's no grade. Now on a one that does have graded items, the check results will give you a listing of what needs to be checked, which might.
Yeah, and then I got that for the one before that. And
right.
So that's what, okay, thank you.
So for that particular one, are we just submitting like a Word document that answers the questions or something like that?
You do that, or just for that one, just upload the packet tracer with nothing else on it, and that's fine. We know you did it then.
The one thing I would advise though is get in the habit of just, we're not going to require the Word document like you say, Donnie, but just get in the habit of saving the packet tracer when you're done, to go ahead and take a screenshot of the grade. It could be 1 out of 1 or 80 out of 100, 80 out of whatever, 80 out of 80, and go ahead and upload both those items. Now, the reason that it's good to get in the habit to do that is when you turn around and you teach this class, hopefully by then Netacad will allow you to see, when you're grading, you'll be able to see that JPEG and not have to download every file. Unfortunately, that's not available for us right now. We had that previously with Canvas, but if you'll go ahead and get in that habit, by the time you teach your class, it'll be ready and your grading will be a lot easier, I promise.
And on that note, is it the .pka file that we're talking about uploading?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, that is
Okay,
correct.
I'm very confused as to where the PKA file is I'm supposed to upload. What I'm uploading is when
Okay.
you say check results and it says, you've done check, 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 check.
Okay, well,
So
let me
I'm
show you
taking
then.
a screenshot
show
of
you.
that. Yeah, show me.
So
what I'm
here's
supposed to
the lab we were just working on, right? So right now my completion percentage is 0%. If I wanted to upload this item, and I got another one open over here, sorry, let that get out of the way. And then, okay, if I wanted to upload the PKA file, the way to do that is I click, well, this is in the way. Give me 1 second, y'all. I got 6,000 things trying to open here. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. I would just click on File, Save As, and you'll see it's a PKA file. Just put your name on it. Okay. Put your name on it, and I'll put my initials, and then that's what you're going to upload right there, Karen.
Upload it into the
class, right here in our class.
It says
So,
add submission. Yeah, add
right here,
submission.
291, you would upload. Now we can't upload it, but see, 6 people have uploaded. So you can upload it right there.
Okay, one other question.
Sure.
Going back to the packet tracer, okay, and you say check my, check to
results.
see, check results. Okay, it says you missed one. I can't go back and just do that one. I have to do the entire thing.
Oh, you can go back and do
over.
one. Just click close here and go fix whatever you missed.
Where did you close it?
Okay, check results. All right, so I'm looking at my assessment item. Let's say I just missed the enable secret on room 146. Just click close on the bottom right hand corner.
Close. Okay.
And go
All
right back and
I
keep
got it.
working. Yeah, don't start over. No. The other thing is too, here's another good tip. Let's say you're working on it and you're halfway through and you got to go somewhere. If you do a file save as and save it with your name, you can just open that back up and everything you've done to that point will be saved.
Okay. Thank you.
Because what we're wanting to do is, the reason we have you upload the entire PKA file is, let's say you're getting 80% on a packet tracer and you can't figure out for the life of you why you can't get 100%. You upload it, you send your instructor an email and say, I just can't get this last 20%. What am I doing wrong? And then Michael, Brian, or I can go look at it and we can say, oh, I see what's happening. And we can try to give you some help. Okay. Other questions? The other item I want to show you before Michael gets started showing the actual, walking through that actual packet tracer a little bit, is we have turned on the module exams. Now, the module exams are available at the end of each module section. And so when you have completed modules 1 through 3, you've read them, you've done the labs, you've done your packet tracers, you're ready to take the exam, you go down here and you click on the exam item and it will take you to the actual exam. Now, it won't take me because I'm not a student, but you will be able to go in here and take the exam. And so each one of these, each section has module exams for it. Now, here's the great news. We're not trying to trick you. We're not trying to hurt you. We're not trying to make life difficult for you. You can take these up to 10 times. Each one of them can be taken up to 10 times. We don't ask for a minimum score. We want you to use them to learn the material. So we're not using it as a punitive way to say, we want you to fail. No, we're not doing that. What we're trying to do is to give you a way to use it to learn. So you can take it up to 10 times without us having to even do a thing on our end. If you want to take it more than 10 times, we can even do that, but it takes a little work on our end. So you just have to let us know and we can make it happen. Okay. But those all exams for the entire class are now on. So if you've been moving forward or you're working forward and getting ahead, you can take those exams. All right. So up to 10 times, and you are welcome to take them multiple times because that's why we've got it. Other questions before I pass it over to Michael and let him do some packet tracer with you. And then I'm going to show you the actual lab with the real gear. Okay. All right, Mike, take over.
All right. I need to the ability to share.
You're now a co-host and you should be able to,
Okay, I got it now.
got it? Okay,
Yes.
there you go. Go right ahead.
Okay. All right, so I'm fit to walk over packet tracer 291. And before I go into that packet tracer, I just wanted to show how to access it again from the inside of your Netacad. And also remember, if I was to just go here to the packet tracer and click on the link, long as I have the reading content open, it should take you to it. If you get a invalid session, then it means that you don't have that reading content open. If the reading content was closed and I click that link, I would get an invalid session, or I don't have access to it. You'll get any of those error messages. So from here, you're gonna download the packet tracer here. I already have it downloaded. So once you download, we're gonna open it up here. And with this packet tracer, it's going over the basic switch and in-device configuration. It gives us an addressing table, which it shows our device's name, which has room
Is there any
140.
reason why your devices and IP addresses are different than mine?
So with this packet tracer, and you'll see it with a couple of other ones, where it has a like one of 3 or 4 configurations that any user may get. So it's if I were to close it out and open it back up, I'll probably get a different topology here. So it's
Thank you. That's what I found. I
Yeah,
wondered
so-
if I was making a mistake. Thank you.
No, it's the same devices. What they did, it's an anti-cheat mechanism.
mhm.
It's trying to be that if, you know, if 2 or 3 students open it up, then there's up to 3 in this particular packet tracer, there's up to 3 different variations. And the neat thing is that you will learn down the road, you can actually create your own packet tracers. You can create and save your own packet tracers. I've used it for contests. I've used it for quizzes in class, but you can actually even make them to where they will auto generate certain fields so that people get different variations. So students sitting beside each other opening up can't cheat. That's a pretty advanced thing, but that's
Yeah.
a thing down the road you could do.
Yeah. So it gives us our addressing table. And as you see, we have our device names and we have our interfaces on the switch. It gives us our management interface, VLAN 1, as well as the addresses and subnet mask for it. So it also gives us our objectives for the lab. And in pretty much all the labs, it's going to give you a brief scenario. And when this lab is telling us we need to configure the initial settings on the 2 switches. And our first step in the requirements is to use a console connection to access the switch. So with this particular lab, it kind of mimics, like Kelly went over earlier at the beginning of class, it mimics you having real equipment and how you would access that device. So in a real life scenario, in order for me to access one of our switches here, I would need to plug in via that console cable. So let me go here to my connections. Console. So you would connect it to your RS-232. And then on the switch or your router, any device, you would go to that console. And the good thing about the console is usually on the back of the device, it's the same color as the cable too. So it's easy to recognize and not mistake it for another port or anything. So once we get our PC connected to the switch, we're going to go to our PC's desktop and we're going to go to our terminal connection. This is the same as a PuTTY. It's just a generic terminal. Our configuration here, our port configuration is already set for us. Once we hit OK, we're in on that device. And as you see, our switch is already loaded up. And it's telling us we're going to name the switches. So I'm going to go through. This is room 145. So I'm going to do an enable. And in order to make a configuration change, you need to go into the configuration mode. So config T. And the good thing about config T is you can hit tab and it'll come and complete the word for you, long as you got the first 2 or 3, and there's no other word that has those same first 2 or 3 letters, you can hit tab on it. Or
Mike, let's stop just a second and mention something too. You'll notice here, folks, switch greater than sign or alligator mouth and switch pound sign. Those two are the 2 different primary modes. One is user exec mode and one is privilege exec mode. And so if you see any Cisco device and it's the greater than, or what I just put in chat, what I call the alligator mouth sign,
yep,
that means you're in user exec mode, which is we like to call a look and see mode. So you can't really make changes to the device. You have very limited access to commands. So Mike, back up one more, back up to just switch. And now put a question mark in.
yep.
Now this is the overall way we do help commands with question marks. Notice how few commands are actually available at the user exec mode. Now Mike, go into privilege exec mode, which by the way, to get there, you type in the command enable, which he shortens to EN because we're lazy. And also because it saves you time. But if you're at the switch pound sign, you're now in privilege exec mode, which means you can now change items. So if he does a question mark, look at how many more commands, keep going there. There's 1 page. So there's a little over a page and a half, which on a real device, the difference is a page of commands to about 3 pages of commands. So those are the 2 primary modes we will work in on a router. User exec, just looking and not doing any changes. Privilege exec, we can actually make changes. Now it's going to go into global config, which you just did. And this will allow you to make changes, and config T is short for configure terminal. This is going to allow them to make changes on the overall device. Okay, so now go ahead, Mike, I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem, I appreciate it. So our first thing, we're gonna name our switch to room 145. So I'm already in configuration mode. So to change the name, we're gonna do host name. Then I'm gonna type in the host name that I want that device to become. So room 145, and hit enter. And another thing to notice, when I hit enter and enter this command and name the switch, you saw my percentage went up on my check results. So that's a good way to kind of guide as if you're on the right track, if you're doing it correctly. And it's gonna tells me to use the 8UB capital RU for password for all the lines. So a good way to see what lines that you have is if you were to just do a show run. And here you see you have a line console, which is here, line con 0. Then you have a line VTY 0 through 4 and 5 through 15 on your switch. So when it says, yes.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, when it says use this password for all the lines, this is the lines that it's referring to. Your line console, which this is going to be the port where the console cable goes into. So we're going to put a password there. And our VTY lines, we have 16 of them, 0 through 15. And what they are virtual terminal lines. So they would be for, as we get later in the class, with Telenet and SSH, where you can remotely manage your device instead of having that console cable to it. So that's what we're protecting there. When we log in via SSH or Telenet, it's going to prompt us for whatever password we put here. So I'm going to go into our console configuration mode again, and it's telling me for the console line. So I'm gonna do line console 0, and I could have went short and just put line con 0. It would have went to the same thing. I'm gonna hit enter, and now I'm gonna type in this password 8UB capital RU. Oh, my bad. So I'm gonna do password 8UB. And one thing about the console and the VTY lines. So right now I put a password here, but if I was to back out, it wouldn't prompt me to enter that password. So one thing that a lot of students always forget is you need to put the word log in. Now, when I back out, Now it's asking me for that password, and I'm putting 8U.
So Mike, that command that you gave, the login command, it logs you in while you're still in the console without you, and pretty much pushes that password without going through like the console reset.
Well, what it does, if I wouldn't have put in the login command,
Mm-hmm.
when I backed out just now, it wouldn't have prompted me for no password, even though I put a password there. What that login do is kind of, I always call it enables. It always enables that password, and or it activates that password for
Okay.
that console port.
Okay.
So a lot of times, if you put in that console password and you don't do login, when you back out, you'll notice that it's not prompting you for a password to get into the console. And then the next thing was our lines. So I'm gonna do line VTY 0 through 15. So with the lines, even though when I did a show run up here, they having separate lines, you can take care of all of them with one command by specifying which lines you want to cover. And then I'm gonna do the same command. So we put in password, and I'm gonna do the same password, UB or U.
Now remember, I'm looking at the text and it says encrypt all clear text passwords.
Yes, so we're gonna do that also.
Okay.
So right now, I got the password in for the VTY lines. I also told it to log in. And then it says we're gonna use our secret password that we're gonna have. So one thing I want to show real quick is from show run, when we look at our passwords now, we can see that it's in clear text.
Oh, okay.
So our passwords now is in clear text. We haven't encrypted anything, but we're gonna go in and we're gonna do our secret password now. So for your secret password, that's your enable secret.
And by the way, that is a password that protects the ability to go from user exec mode into privileged exec mode. So the enable secret command is going to keep you from being able to just, once you're in the device, being able to jump over to what it amounts to the administrator level.
Yes. And also with you have an enable password have you put in sometimes also, but when you put that enable secret over it, that enable secret is gonna trump that enable password. So I got my enable secret here. We have that in. So now if I look, my enable secret, since it's a secret, is gonna be encrypted from the start as soon as you put in your enable secret. But your line console passwords, we see that they're still plain text. So our next step is to encrypt all clear text passwords. So we're in configuration mode, and to encrypt all clear text passwords, we want to use the command service password encryption. What it's going to do is going to encrypt any clear text password we have already configured. So I hit service password encryption, and I'm gonna do a show run. And one quick tip to keep having to go back to your privilege mode to do a show run, you can enter the word do in front of it, and you can go from your configuration prompt here. So now we see that our clear text passwords has been encrypted. And now it wants us to configure the message of the day. So for our message of the day, we want to start, the command for that is banner MOTD for message of the day. Then you need to have a special character. I always use the £. And
Okay, Mike, let's at this point, since I'm gonna show a lot of this on the
okay,
other, on the
no
rip
problem.
here, let's go ahead and just
Show
show
check results.
yeah, do a check results and show what you've got.
Okay.
So do a check results. and you can see what he has been able to get correct and what he has not. By the way, one of the bad things about this sometimes with banner message of the day and some of the others, if you don't put in exactly what it asks for, you will not get credit for it. So be aware of that. Usually even in passwords, especially, they have to be the exact same case and everything. So just be aware. But you can see now he's basically completed 18% of the different devices, and he would save this and upload it to our into our class.
And also I would do the screenshot too. Of the
Yep, the
results here.
screenshot right there and upload that along with your PKA file. And if this was turned into us, we would know that we would be able to, this student probably needs a little help because they didn't complete it. So we would be able to look at that and make some assumptions on it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then, all right, Dan or Mike, will you show again real quickly, Dan, how to open packet tracers? How you
Okay.
go about, if you're, how you, yeah, share the screen again to show how you would go to open a packet tracer from inside the curriculum, or how you open it.
Yes. So here we have the packet tracers. You'll see they'll be up under this folder here. It says complete the following packet tracers. And any one of them that you want to go to, you click on it. And long as you got the reading material open, by reading material, this part here where you read the content, you can click on this link here and go to it. And also, you don't necessarily have to use that link. If you just go to the reading material here and go to the course index and select packet tracers, you'll have them here also where you can click on it and it'll take you to it also. And then from here, once you see this the number packet tracer you want, here's the document that you can download, and here's the actual file. So you click the file, it downloads to your computer. Once it finished downloading, you can just click from this screen, or you can go to your downloads and double click it. But you need to make sure that you do have packet tracer installed, the actual packet tracer application installed.
Yeah, if you don't have it installed at home, that may be what's going on, Dan.
Yes.
It won't open if it's installed already at work. So yeah, just make sure it's installed, the latest version's installed at home.
Yes.
Also. Okay, thank you, Mike.
Uh-huh.
Any questions, everybody, or anybody? Okay, I
One
want,
quick thing.
Go ahead.
I guess I'm confused about these passwords. If you say enable config T, enable password, that's just going to do your user mode, right?
correct. That is the password used when you type enable to go from your user exec mode to privilege exec mode.
Privilege exec, okay. So then the next one is enable secret, and that is going to give you a password for the privilege exec mode. Is that correct?
No. Enable and enable secret do both the same thing. It's just one of them is a depreciated version because it does not encrypt the password in a strong encryption method. The other is the preferred method. So we should not, enable passwords really should not even be used, but they are the exact same things enable secret, except for they're not encrypted in the startup config. So let me this will help. So we're at what mode are we at right here?
You're in exec privilege mode.
Nope, I'm in user exec mode.
I'm sorry, user privilege mode, yes.
Yep,
User
so
privilege
look,
mode.
I can look and make no changes. If I type enable, by default, it will just immediately let me go in with no password, okay, because there's no password set. If I get into the device, okay, so I'm gonna go to switch, and I'm gonna be in global config, so I go into global config. All right, I can put in the command enable and then some password.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
That would then be the password that would be prompted when I went from enable and I typed in enable. But the problem is this password would not be saved in the config in a hard encryption format. It's actually in an easable breakable format. Okay. For that
Can I
reason,
stop you
this
there? Couldn't it
command,
be enable password and then you put in the password?
no,
No.
but it
Okay.
may be, I can't remember. I don't even use it anymore, but it may be enable password, but
Okay.
I can't off the top of my head right this second. We'll look at it in a second. But the correct, and always what you want to use real world is you want to use some command enable secret and then whatever you want your password to be.
Okay, so you
Because
should
this
say,
stores it in the config in a non-reversible encryption format.
secret.
This does the same job as enable secret, but it stores it as an easily decrypted format. In fact, it's not encrypted at all until you do service password encryption.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Okay, yes,
Okay. All right. I want to do something real quickly. We obviously also have, as part of our class, actual hands-on labs using real gear. So the lab that maps to this packet tracer 291 is the lab 292, which is basically the same lab, but on real gear. So I want to show you, once you've logged into NetLabs, okay, you can make a reservation very simply. You go to new lab reservation, schedule lab for myself, find your class. You don't have 10,000 classes like me. Okay, you will have just this one class, ITN ITC SU22. You will then be able to go to CSNA 1 right here, and then you'll see the list of all the labs. So you just click on the lab you want to do, find an open pod, which, by the way, remember, there's much more than 4 pods. If you click right here, there's up to 20 pods. And the red line is right now, so you can click right here and you can set a time limit of whatever you want. And then also remember, you can do it in the future. If you want to do one this weekend, you can go ahead and schedule it, but please use it if you make that reservation. Okay. So what I've got right now is I've got a reservation that's spinning up the gear. So right now, 2 routers, two switches and 2 virtual machines are booting in our data center. Now it takes about with these devices, almost 5 to 8 minutes to get everything booted up, because this is real gear booting. So you'll see here, if we watch this long enough, you'll actually see it go through the power on self-test. You'll see it go and find the iOS and flash, load the iOS in the memory, and then the device will be booted. Okay, so it's booting the devices right here. And you can see the PC is already booted because they boot a little bit quicker. But the real physical switches are booting. It just takes them a while. You also notice it tells me keyboard input disabled, automation in progress, which means I can hit many times I want, I can hit enter and it's not going to do anything because the NetLab system, NetLab Plus system, is controlling the device at this point. So it's going in and working on it. Now, in the interest of time, I made 2 reservations. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my other lab that's already up and running. So this switch is actually fully running and available. Okay. Now, one of the things we mentioned that I've got to repeat is when you do a lab in NetLabs, always use the content from inside of NetLabs. Now, what I suggest people do is you download that file. Okay. All right. And then you just open it in Word and convert it to a Word document. That way you can enter in any of the information you want to into the document. So if you've got any version of Word, it will convert a PDF into a Word document. Okay, but make sure you use this version because it is updated for working on NetLabs. And here it is, converted to a Word document. And it's no problem to do it. So now you'll notice that on these particular devices, it talks about, it gives you your IP addresses, and then it says you will deploy a simple network of 2 hosts and 2 switches. You'll apply the IP addressing scheme and the other information. So one of the first things it says to do is configure the static IP addresses on the PC. So we go to our PCs. I've changed the screen resolution, by the way, which by default right now, they're real big. So if you go in here and the resolution is too big and you don't like it, just change it because it won't hurt anything. It goes right back to where it was before. So you can always change it to 1024, 768 is what I use. Okay. But so the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to put in static IP addresses. Now, if you don't know how to put on a static IP address, you can Google that. and check it, but it's exactly, since these are real devices, we do it just like we would on any other PC. Now there's 5 different ways to do it on a Cisco, on a PC, but I just do it this way. Open my network. I go down to change adapter options. Right click Ethernet properties, double click, and I'm gonna set a static IP address. And I've got to remember what that IP address is. So I'm actually gonna put my document over on my other screen. This is where it's very nice to have multiple screens when you're working with our labs. So 192.168.1.10. So we're going to do 192.168.1.10. Tab it. We'll get that. There's no default gateway because there's no router in this particular lab. So you don't need a default gateway. Click OK. Click OK. Close this out. PCB. I'm going to go in here and do the same. So at this point, you're doing exactly what you would do on 2 PCs in your lab. Now, one of the things that you should have noticed, and I hope you noticed, is if you're going to be teaching this in your classroom, you are going to need the ability to put IP addresses onto your PCs. What does that mean from an IT department standpoint?
Need admin rights.
Exactly. You're going to need admin rights, or you're going to need some type of virtual machine that you can change the IP addresses on. So I just set the IP address on PC A and PCB. I'm actually going to just do this. I'll put them side by side. Now, my next item is to go into the switch. So let's go in our switch here and take a look. Now, what mode am I in?
Executive mode, user exec mode.
User exec mode, right. So if I type the command enable, you'll notice there's no password on this right now. So it just drops me directly into privilege exec mode. That's a very bad idea on a production switch, to just let somebody have access to your switch. So one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to put passwords on it, but let's just go ahead and configure our host name. By the way, configure terminal is the full command, but we are very lazy, so we usually make it conf t. Anything, the great news is every command can be shortened to its least ambiguous form. That's it. So conf t is the shortest version of configure terminal. If you try anything else, if you try con t, it won't work because it's ambiguous. Okay, so conf t, and you'll eventually learn these. By the way, this is a programming language. People ask me all the time if you know programming. Well, I know about this much Python, but this is really just a programming language. It's a way to make the Cisco routers and switches do what you want. But I'm gonna set a host name, host S1, and you'll notice, look at how it immediately changes. Excuse me, why is that? It's because I'm changing the running config. So everything I add in is going into the running config. If I do by the way, typically you got to drop out of global config in order to do a show run command. So here's show run. You'll see my host name is set to S1. But watch what happens when I do a show startup config.
There it is. I don't need to.
You'll notice the host name still switch. So my running config and my startup config are different at this point because I have not saved the running config to the startup config. So if I were to reboot this particular switch, or if I was to lose power, I would lose whatever I've configured. Is there a question? Okay, so let's copy running config to startup config. Now, the startup config has been saved into non-volatile RAM. And if I do a show startup config, oops, you'll see that the host name is S1 because I merged the running config to the startup config. This gets people in trouble all the time with Cisco devices because they take all this time to build these configs and then they forget to save it. And then 3 months later, the power goes off at a remote site and that site has no connectivity because the config file wasn't saved. All right, so let's go into config T here. Next thing it wants me to do is do no IP domain lookup. That's so if you happen to type commands wrong, it won't sit there and try to do a lookup. And then we're going to do the enable secret. Actually, I'm going to start off with enable. And by the way, if I never know what the command is, you can always type E question mark and get all the commands that begin with E. Or if I know it's enable, but I don't know what comes after the enable, I can type enable space question mark. It will tell me all of the items that would go afterwards. So I could do enable password. You were right, Karen. It was enable password and then the password. I don't use that one at all anymore. So it's we don't even really put that in. But let's imagine I put enable password of, I'm just going to put Cisco. All right. Now if I type exit, and I type enable, it prompts me for a password, and that would be CISCO, Cisco, because that's the enable password. But watch this. I do a show run. Look at this. The password sits in here in clear text. And even if I encrypt it, the encryption method used to encrypt this for service password encryption can be broken in about 3 seconds, less than that, about 2.8 milliseconds. So that is why we do not use that command anymore. Instead, we use this command, enable secret. I'll put class. Now here's the crazy thing. Both the enable password and the enable secret password are on there, but as soon as you put the enable secret password on there, you have to put in class to log in instead of the other password. The other password is now null and void. So basically this supersedes this. So real world, we never even use this anymore. We don't even want our students putting it on there. We
Hey,
always use enable
Kelly,
secret.
could you do a quick explanation as to why there's a 5 between the secret and
Yep.
the
That is
the
the
hash?
that is the type of encryption. That is the type of encryption. So if you here it is. So Cisco talks about their different encryption levels, but a level with that 5 is a type of encryption. So that is that. This 7, you'll notice, watch this. Let me do this. Let me go just a little bit further. Michael showed you putting a console password on. So I'm going to show you that too. But one of the other things I will tell you to always put on your console is always put in logging synchronous. And the reason being, it keeps, when you exit or something goes on the screen, it returns automatically for you. So always put that in on your console line. But I'm going to put a password of Cisco and then log in. Okay. And then I'm going to exit here and exit. Wait a minute, gotta go back. Sorry, big T. Do show run. Now, normally I can't do a run inside of configuration, but the special thing do lets me run any command. That's a neat little trick to learn. So I didn't have to drop out of config to do this. But if I do a do show run, you will notice that my passwords are in clear text. Okay, so let's do service space password encryption. Okay, now we do a do show run. You'll notice my passwords are encrypted, but you'll also notice they're at level 7. Cisco level 7 password decrypt. Okay, so let's do this right here. Let's take, all right, so let's put in the type 7 hash here. It's 14141B 180 F0. There you go. That's how fast it decrypted. So level 7 encryption is useless. The only thing it's good for, and the reason we use it, is so people can't shoulder surf and see your passwords when you're running configs. But if anybody gets a hold of your actual configuration, these encrypted passwords are not going to survive because I just decrypted that password right there. So that 7 and the 5 are the type of encryption used. So here, let's see if I can may actually be able to copy this out of here. Let's see, copy, see if I can paste it. Yep, I did. Yep, and remember that was Cisco too, because that was the same one, same password. So That's what that 5 and 7 means. Okay.
Hey, Kelly.
Yes.
Oh, I see Brian answered them. I was gonna say,
Yeah, one of the questions was, is there check results? And no, there are not check results in NetLabs. This is the great thing about NetLabs. It makes you troubleshoot your issues or your errors, which will make you understand it better as you move forward.
Well, and it's real gear too. It's real gear, so it works like real gear. Now, the other thing we know is on routers and switches, we don't have, I got a little bit of echo. Karen, can you mute? I think it might be. Okay. The other thing.
I have a question about that.
I go ahead, answer or ask it.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Enable password. We're not going to do that. Doesn't do any good. Okay, so then if you want to set privilege exec mode password, you're going to do config T, enable secret, and then put in your password.
Yep, whatever you want your password to be. Exactly.
And then exit.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can exit or you can just move on to the next thing you want to do.
Okay, I don't know which one is the one you have to put log in. If you just want to encrypt all passwords, you're going to put in service password dash encryption. Now everything's encrypted. Is that correct?
Correct. That encrypts all passwords that are not encrypted by default. That's that command
so
right
everything's
there.
going to be encrypted. What was the password that you were trying to put in where you have to put in login after you put in the password?
Right down here are consoles. So the console and VTY lines. So you put in the password and you put in the command login. Otherwise, it will not ask you to log in.
This is for the console port. Okay,
right.
I got you.
And for the VTY line. So notice we also have these VTY lines. So, and let me show you how those are used. Let me show you that real quick. So let's go line VTY 015. We'll do login. And by the way, if you put the password first, it barks at you and says, well, it does on the console. It's usually barks at you and says you got to have a login. Okay. And then I'm also going to put in, because this is a switch, we got to put in an IP address. Now, a lot of times people say I had to type exit to go back one level, then go into the VLAN interface. No, when you get good at doing this stuff, you can bounce around. So I can just do interface VLAN 1. You'll notice it goes directly to config if. So now I'm in the actual interface VLAN 1, put in an IP address on it. So there's all kind of shortcuts you're going to learn as you continue through your time. And the more time you spend with Cisco devices, the better you'll get on them. I mean, it's just a matter of using them all the time. So let's do a no shut. So let me show you what we can do. From PCA, I just put an IP address on S1. So I do a do show IP interface brief. And you'll see I've got the IP address of 1.1 on this particular switch. From PCA, I'm going to open up. Let's do actual size so it won't be blurry. Okay. I'm going to do an IP config, and you'll see that I'm 192.168.1.10. First thing I'm going to do is ping 192.168.1.10. And we have pingage. Okay. The reason that's important is because I guarantee you we're not going to telnet if we can't ping. So now we're going to open up PuTTY. When it prompts you, just say yes. And I'm going to say I want to telnet to the device 192.168.1.1. Yes, I know that is absolutely insecure, but this is a first level course. We're teaching you how just to get in. Click OK. You'll notice it should eventually prompt me for a password. Well, that password is the password I just set on the VTY line, which should be Cisco, because that is a virtual terminal line. So I type Cisco, and guess what? Now I am in that switch remotely via a virtual terminal line. So I went across the network. This, by the way, is called in-band management. So I'm going across the management network to get to the device. The console port, when you click in the back, is called out-of-band management. And then if I wanted to, I could do enable, put in my password of class, and now I'm inside the switch, can do whatever I want. If I go back to the switch, and if I can remember the commands to do show line V2I, there it is. Yep, show line B2I question mark. Okay. There's show line B2I. Now the question was, can I put a different, I had a question while Michael was going over the thing. Can I put a different password on each B2I line? The answer is no, because we don't know which one we're coming in. Each time you connect, it will change. It will change a different one. Change to a different one. Okay. So in fact, I don't even know what B2I line I'm on right now because it picks one of the 15. So you don't really know which one you're in. But the good news is that is a remote connection via telnet to this switch. The other things here are just looking at basic configurations, but you'll notice anything I've changed will not be, if I do a little show startup config, you notice my name's changed, but there's no enable secret password. None of the changes I made to the V2I lines or the console are even on here. And that is because I have not saved the running config to the startup config. To do that, what is the command? Copy running config, show users. Okay, yeah, you're right, that'll do it. Show running config, startup config, and now it's all saved. Yep, there you go, you're right. There's show users. I brain farted on that one, Brian. By the way, I have been hit by a truck. That's my excuse. I was hit by a truck in 2016 and paralyzed from the neck down. So I use that as my excuse.
Hey, Kelly, can you explain why the V2Y, there's 16 V2Y lines and one console line, and why you can actually set them up different?
Well, there's one console line because there's only one port on the back of the device. So the console line is a physical port. All right.
Right.
You can actually make more than 16 V2I lines. It's just the default on routers is 6 and the default on switches is 16. And the idea is there really shouldn't be a need for more than 1 or 2 users to ever be in remotely on a switch anyway.
And currently.
So I don't know why they picked 16 as the default other than it just being, you know.
And that is for concurrent usage, right? Concurrent connections.
Correct, correct. And by the
So
way,
does it cover here how you would lock out the additional? So if you only want one person to remote in at a time?
Well, what we do there is we don't necessarily just lock it to one. We can actually limit it to what IP addresses can attach. And also we can set up local user accounts. That's covered later. So
Okay.
there is ways to do it, but it's, we also have a thing, the ICE, Cisco has ICE, which is a specialized system that can do user authentication and also user authorization. So now, one of the things I'll
that's
notice,
outside of the quad A function?
yes.
Oh.
That's a different product completely that the device, all Cisco devices can connect to, and it can even integrate with your Active Directory so that the user account will have to be authenticated.
Okay.
I do want to show one thing here too, real quick, before that it gets any further. But you'll notice it's saying I'm about to run out of time. We've set these labs up to where you can request more time, up to 4 times, I believe it is. And if you do, it will give you another 30 minutes, as long as there's no one waiting in line right after you to use the lab. So if the lab is being used right after you, then you would not be able to do an extension. Okay. How do I save this lab to the local drive? There is no way to save it to the local drive other than what we just did here, which is taking this PDF. See, this is the PDF, and we just do a file and we actually just download it and then open it in Word. And then that way down here, when you get asked questions, if there are any questions asked, you can fill out your questions. So like this, up, down, you know, whatever, down. So you just save it as a Word document, and then you upload this with your name for the lab itself. So when we go in here, if I was doing this lab and I just completed it, I would fill out anything that's in this table, save this Word document with my name in front of it, and then upload it just like I do the packet tracers. Does that make sense, Michael? Okay. Now, the beauty of these labs, okay, is that once you're done, okay, so we've completed, let's say we've done the entire lab, you know, and by the way, just if you read through it, this is walking you through exactly what you need to do. Why are they grouped in two groups, 0, 4, and 5, 15? I have no clue, Amar, none whatsoever. That's a good question, but I don't know why. I do know, I believe, let's see if we can do this. Line B2I 0, 100. Nope. Let's see if it, nope, it will only do 15. So they won't let you add any more to the switches. Now on a router, you can actually, there's only by default 5, but you can add up to 16. But I have no idea. I'm sure it's got something to do with when it was programmed. That was the memory range space of where it was being done.
One of the conversations with it, Kelly, was when Cisco decided to do that was 0 through 4 would have been used for senior staff, and then if they had junior staff, they could assign 5 through 15. But
Maybe.
it's a way to keep up with it. I mean, there's really no separate.
I mean, I've done this for 25 years and I've never read why. So that's possible. That is possible. Okay, now here's the great idea, or the great thing about this lab is when you are done, no matter what you've done pretty much to the devices, all you have to do is click reservation, end reservation now, and it will clean these devices up, take all your configs off, and prepare it for the next student. If for some reason you did want to save the configuration, you can click save it, and you can save it to your work history, save to your files. You also can always, down the road, we'll teach you how to do this too, but you can also do a show run, and then you can just copy this out and put it in a Word file, okay? I want to show you one more thing. We talked about copy, run, start, copying, running config, startup config. You want to see how short you can actually get a command? That is the shortest you can make copy, run, start, cop RS. That's the exact same command as copy, run, start. But there's also an old command, Jessica, you know where yeah, exactly. There's an old command they keep saying they're going to take out, but they never will. WR, which is short for write mem, and that is the exact same thing as copy, run, start. So yeah, Jessica, that was an old command. They keep saying they're going to get rid of it, and thank goodness they never have. And I hope they never do, because that's the one I always use. Yeah. You also notice, by the way, we have Dell switches in our data center. We bought them because honestly, they were a little bit cheaper and they did what we needed. A lot of the commands that we're doing in here, a lot of commands are the same between multiple vendors. So be aware that a lot of what you're learning will apply to any vendor's switch, any vendor's router, because you just have to learn the little idiosyncrasies of the vendors. Any other questions? Yeah, Dell, Aruba, yeah, exactly, Donnie. Dell, Aruba, they're all basically very similar. I've done some work on Juniper stuff, a little bit, somewhat the same. Yeah.
Yeah, Kelly, I got a quick question on the this Net Labs, which you've got here.
Mhm.
I thought you said maybe last week that there, you have a record of when we go in there and do work. Is that, did I
do.
misunderstand?
I do.
Okay, good. Yeah, so
Yeah.
other than us like filling out the Word document, answer the questions and stuff, there's a record of us having been in there and so forth, right?
Yep. So basically I can go in here and I can look at, I just did a lab. I'm trying to remember which one I did. Let's see if I did anything here. I think it's Bazil. I'll do Bazil because I know Bazil. He won't care. All right. So here I can look at everything that Bazil typed in. So if I look at his command index, okay, this is every command that Bazil put on the devices. If I look at the session logs, here's everything he did on R1. So I can go down here and look and see that he typed in, let's see, got right now, he run tickle. He run a tickle reset script, loaded the trouble ticket. He went in here, he did all the work. So I basically can see he put in show IP route OSPF, he put in show run. I see every single thing that he did inside of here. So every command you type, we can see.
Fabulous. And yeah, because I was just thinking if we get really stuck down a rabbit hole, you could troubleshoot with that.
Oh yeah, we can troubleshoot it. We can go and look at it and say, hey, something really did go wrong here. Okay. Well, everyone, Alex, you're saying you're getting ready to go. We're going to call it a day anyway. I'm in my 2 reservations. I'm going to stop my share here. We are going to ask a couple favors of you. One is next week, Michael and I will be at Cisco Live. So we will be on West Coast time. And so Brian is going to handle classes next week on Monday and Wednesday. You know, if something happens, it has emergency, we could come in too, but it will be Brian for next week. The week after, we will all be in Atlanta, but we'll figure out a way to run our class from Atlanta because we'll be back on East Coast time then. So if you have any questions, please let us know. When are you taking the first exam? You take it whenever you want to. It's open and available. Michael, we've turned on all the exams for the entire class. Again, I reiterate, you can take them up to 10 times. Yeah, you saw my board game collection. Yeah, I got a bunch of them. That the scary thing is you ought to see my house. That's just my school board games.
I'm not sure where it's located. Where's it located? Is it something
Okay.
we have to do with,
Yep,
I didn't
here
see
you go.
that part. I guess I wasn't here.
Yeah, we did it at the very beginning of class, but
Okay,
if
I'm
you go
sorry.
right here in the class, at the bottom of each section are the module exams.
Okay,
So if you click right there, they're on for you now. They have not been active until today, about an hour ago. We turned them on about an hour ago.
okay,
So at the end of each one, you've got an exam. We're allowing you to do them up to 10 times. So we are not trying to trick you or use it as a way to keep you from passing. We want you to learn.
okay.
Yeah, Jim, that would be great. Like I said, we're going to be at the Skills USA. We are all national judges for Skills USA. So we write the hands-on test for internetworking. This is the first year it's in Atlanta at the Georgia World Congress Center. And so we're interested in seeing how that's going to run since it has been in Louisville up to this point. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. Well, Jim, I hope they'll let spectators in. We have been told that they're not going to allow spectators. I hope they will. But
If push come to shove, we can put you down as a.
yeah, we can always sneak in and say, hey. So
You always need help. We more hands the better. So if you want to come help us judge, we can sure
Yes,
work
ma'am.
something out there.
we can make that happen. So, all right, everyone, we are going to, I'm going to stop recording.